It's been said that in the face of adversity, your true character will be revealed. So when the chips are down, and it seems that all hope is lost, would you rise to the occasion? Would you find an inner strength you didn't realize you had? Would you persevere in your darkest hour? Or would you collapse and lose yourself within your agony? Would you fall to pieces and accept the fate of your impending doom? Such a tale is told in the 1944 classic Lifeboat, a story of 9 people adrift in the Atlantic, forced to face all the hardships of Mother Nature in times of war, as well as one another. So sit back as we unwind this Alfred Hitchcock classic. And welcome to the Retro Films Podcast. What's going on, guys? This is Jaco, and I'm back with another one. So this is 1944's Lifeboat, an Alfred Hitchcock classic. And quite frankly, this is probably the most underrated Alfred Hitchcock movie to ever have been made. So this story takes place during World War II when a ship bound for Britain is torpedoed by a German warship. And we would come to find out that the German warship was also struck by the American ship. So here we have a lifeboat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean surrounded by a ton of wreckage. And one by one we begin to see passengers surface to seek safety upon the lifeboat. The first passenger we meet is Connie Porter, portrayed by Tallulah Bankhead. Now, I want to go ahead and say right up front that Tallulah Bankhead absolutely steals the show in this movie. She is without a doubt the star of the film. She takes center stage, and she is fantastic in this role. She reminds me very much of an anti-hero. The kind of character you both love and hate. You love her for her elegance and her charm, but you also hate her because she's very materialistic and she only seems to connect with those she deems to be useful in the moment. If I had to compare her to any character from the modern day movies, I would say that she's very much like Loki from the Avengers. We absolutely love Tom Hiddleston's performance as the character, but we despise Loki because he's only motivated entirely by selfish means. And that describes Tallulah Bankhead's performance as Connie in the movie Lifeboat. In the opening scene of the movie, we see Connie is the first passenger upon the lifeboat. And we get a really good idea of the kind of character she's going to turn out to be because she's sitting there by herself and she's dressed to the nines. She doesn't at all look like she was just involved in a shipwreck. She looks more like she's dressed to go to a business meeting. And then we see her glance down at her stockings and there's a run. And she has this look on her face of just complete and utter disgust. Never mind that the world is blown apart around her and that there's countless amounts of people who are floating dead nearby. And the very next person we see swimming towards the lifeboat would be John Kovac. And as this man struggles to get to the lifeboat, rather than reaching out with a helping hand, Connie reaches instead for her camera to take photos of this. She's documenting the entire shipwreck because she's a reporter and she's very much involved in her career. And she even brags about all of the photos she took of the ship going down, of it being bombed, of people jumping overboard, and it's absolutely disgusting, but she is proud of her work. So eventually we do see her put the camera down and reach out to help Kovac onto the lifeboat. And as he gets into the lifeboat, she begins immediately wiping her hands off in disgust because this man is wet and he's covered in nasty wreckage, and she is absolutely just petrified by the fact that she just got her hand filthy from helping Kovac into the boat. So this is the kind of character that Connie is, and we get a whole lot more of that throughout the film. Now, Kovac is a member of the ship's crew. He works in the engine room. And he's the kind of guy that grew up in a working class family. He's from the south side of Chicago. Kovac is your average alpha male kind of guy. He is the one that fancies himself the leader of the group. and his ego oftentimes gets the better of him. We learn throughout the course of the film that he's been involved in many different relationships with many different women, as he has their initials tattooed across his chest and other various places on his upper body. So the next passenger to come aboard the lifeboat is Stanley Garrett, otherwise known as Sparks. Sparks is another member of the ship's crew. He works in the radio control room, and it's decided in the movie that he has the most experience with navigating the sea and that he should be the one to determine which direction to row the lifeboat, although his navigation experience is extremely limited. Sparks is from Britain, and you can tell right off the bat that he and Kovac do know each other, and Sparks has no problem letting Kovac call the shots. We would then see 3 more passengers struggling to get to the lifeboat. The first among them is Alice McKenzie. Now, Alice is a nurse. Her experience in the medical field does turn out to be very handy in this particular situation. And Alice seems to be the all-American girl next door kind of character. She's very sweet, she's very pretty, and she only seems to want to help others around her who are in need. At one point in the film, she makes the comment that she doesn't understand the idea of war and that she hates the idea of people killing one another, and that the reason she became a nurse in the first place is to try to at least help those who have hurt one another in this world conflict. Alice seems to be a very good and benevolent character throughout the film, but we do learn at one point that she is involved in an affair with a married man who is in England, which is her reason for being aboard the ship going to London in the first place. The next character among these 3 is Gus. Now, Gus is a very likable guy. He's very funny. He likes to dance. He likes to drink. He likes sports. He likes to have a good time. Everybody in the ship gets along great with Gus. But unfortunately, Gus was wounded in the shipwreck, so he's not mobile during the film at all. And at one point, it's determined that the wound in his leg is becoming infected and that his leg would have to be amputated, which they do perform that procedure later on in the film. And I must say that the performance that William Bendix puts on as this character, Gus, is just absolutely brilliant. I enjoy the moments that we get Gus in this film. Just before the operation they have to perform to amputate Gus's leg, Gus gets absolutely hammered on brandy. He gets totally lit, and he says a whole lot of funny things in that moment. It is absolutely just one of the best performances in the film. Great stuff from William Bendix. The next character is C.J. Rittenhouse. Now, Rittenhouse is a millionaire, and he has a huge ego, and he almost immediately assumes command over this lifeboat. Now, his ego clashes with Kovac's in a major way. And from this clash, we would see the representation of class warfare throughout the duration of the movie. Now, Henry Hull, the actor who plays C.J. Rittenhouse in this film, gives a great performance here. This is actually one of my favorite performances in the movie. It is absolutely top-notch acting, well worth the watch in this film. The next character is Joe. Now, Joe is the porter of the ship. Now, on the surface, Joe might not seem like a very interesting character, but actually, Joe is probably one of the more interesting characters in this film because Joe tends to be the moral compass of the group. He tends to be the one who wants to stay out of the conflicts. He tends to be the one who is first to lend a helping hand. And he's the only character in the boat with a spiritual side. He is the only character who expresses that he has a deep-seated belief in God. And furthermore, he is the only character who is revealed in the end to have a family. He's married and he has children. But as we would come to learn, Joe is not without flaw. He has a past, and in his past, he was once upon a time a thief and a pickpocket. Now, he does express that he is not proud of his past and that he has, in fact, turned his life over for a higher purpose. Next up is Mrs. Higley. Now, Mrs. Higley is from Britain. She is with her baby, but her baby has drowned in the swim to the lifeboat. It is obvious from the get-go that Mrs. Higley is not in her right mind at all. She is completely unaware that her baby is drowned. She seems to be completely unaware of where she is. She tries to jump out of the boat, and to keep her from hurting herself, the other people in the boat have to tie her down. The last character to get onto the lifeboat is Willie. Now, we know that Willie is German because he speaks German as soon as he gets into the lifeboat. This is where things begin to get really interesting because there is disagreement among the other passengers in the lifeboat as to how they should handle this situation. Willie is obviously a Nazi, and he is obviously part of the crew who sunk their ship in the first place. The disagreement ensues over whether or not you treat him as a prisoner of war, or do you show no mercy and throw him back overboard? We'll be right back with the Retro Films Podcast. Hello guys, are y'all looking for some fantastic looking socks? Well, look no further than Dead Soxy. Dead Soxy is the only brand that I trust. They stay up all throughout the day. There's no pulling, no tugging, nothing like that. Once they are up, they are in place and they are not coming down. If you're looking for something casual, if you're looking for something formal, if you're looking for dress socks, ankle socks, they got you covered. Go check out deadsoxy.com. Look for the latest promos. They've always got something nice, something classy, and something special just for you. Deadsoxy.com is where it's at. Looking for something sporty? They got all the team colors you could possibly want. Looking for something dressy for the board meeting? They got you covered there too. For the absolute best socks on the market today, go to deadsoxy.com. And welcome back to the Retro Films Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back from that break. We're talking about the 1944 Alfred Hitchcock classic Lifeboat. So, that was a lot of characters to introduce, but it was very important to take the time to do so. Now, here we all are together, 9 different people in a lifeboat. You've got a whole lot of ego going on between Kovac, Rittenhouse, and Connie, which seems to be the center point of most of the drama throughout this film. Then you have the more grounded and centered characters like Alice, Joe, and Sparks, who only seem to want to help everyone else through this and just get through it as best they can. And then you have Gus, who is wounded and can't really help anyone else or himself, but he is there nonetheless, and he does need medical attention. Also, there's Mrs. Higley, who is a danger to herself. She is not in her right mind. She seems to be shell-shocked from this whole event. She's tried to jump overboard, and she has been tied down to keep from hurting herself. And then we have Willie, who is an enemy during this time of war. He came from the Nazi ship, which sunk the ship that everyone else was on. There is a great deal of conflict as to how they handle this situation, and it becomes very, very heated. It is, however, decided that they treat him as a prisoner of war. It is a vote that's taken and decided with Kovac and Gus being the most critical of this decision. They do not trust Willie from the very get-go. Their vote is to toss him back over and show no mercy to him because he is, in fact, the enemy and they are, in fact, at war. In the meantime, Rittenhouse has assumed command of the lifeboat. He is giving orders to everyone else. They seem to be following. And this is where Kovac stands up and says, "Hey, who appointed you as the captain of this lifeboat?" And the egos begin to clash. There is great indecision about the direction they should row. It is quickly determined that Bermuda would be the best destination for them at this point. However, navigating the sea is not anyone's strong suit in this particular situation. Sparks decides which direction to go because he is the radio control man, and everyone seems to agree that he is best in the position to make that decision. However, Willie is quick to disagree. He says that if you row in that particular direction, you're only going to go further out to sea, and if Bermuda is your destination, you should go the opposite direction. Now, Kovac is quick to disagree with this. He does not trust this Nazi. He says that we should row in the direction that Sparks goes, although Sparks is very hesitant and not 100% certain that he is putting them on the correct path. After a lot of back and forth, it is soon revealed that Willie is in fact a captain from the U-boat, and he is in fact the best person to determine the course they should take to get to Bermuda. This only increases the tension amongst the people on this lifeboat. Now, all the while this is going on, Connie is not very pleased with her situation. One by one, she is being stripped of all her material possessions. Her camera goes overboard with all her precious film on it. Her typewriter goes overboard, which she was typing a story of this entire situation for her reporting career. Mrs. Higley breaks free from her restraints and jumps overboard in the night wearing Connie's fur coat. So for Connie, the materialistic one of the bunch, this just keeps going from bad to worse. Also, the situation with Gus's wounded leg becomes of great concern. It is decided that his leg has to be amputated or it would become a threat to his life. Alice says that she's just a nurse, she's never assisted in an amputation operation at all, and that she is in no position to perform this surgery. However, Willie reveals that he was a surgeon in his civilian life before enlisting in the German military. And so we are placed in a situation where we are forced to trust the enemy once more. So the operation to amputate Gus's leg is performed, and it looks as though Gus is going to make a full recovery from this sketchy operation that they performed with little more than a bottle of brandy, a pocket knife, and a lighter. And it seems as though that the members of the lifeboat are beginning to put more and more trust in Willie. However, Sparks begins to doubt that they are on the right course to Bermuda, and this once again creates more tension within the group. It is discovered that Willie has had a compass this entire time that he has kept hidden from the rest of the group, and he is forced to admit that they are not, in fact, on the right course to Bermuda, but they are being rowed to the German supply ship. A fierce storm would roll over the horizon, and it would nearly sink the lifeboat. Amidst the chaos and the struggle to keep the lifeboat afloat, the food and water supplies go overboard, everyone goes into a panic, and this is where Willie assumes command of the lifeboat. He quickly tells the others what to do in order to keep the lifeboat afloat, and they comply. In the panic, there is an interesting moment between Kovac and Connie, where when it appears the lifeboat is going to be sunk, Kovac grabs Connie and kisses her and says, "We might as well go down together, eh, Connie?" This sort of breaks the tension between Kovac and Connie that has been going on through the entire duration of the film. And although the two characters seem to have a bit of a disdain for one another, there is an attraction there, and Connie becomes very much attached to Kovac at this point. So they survive the storm, however the food and water supply is all but gone. And here they are adrift in the Atlantic with the enemy rowing them to his supply ship. Now this is the point when all hope is lost. Everyone aboard seems to have accepted the fate that they are going to be rowed to a German supply ship and become prisoners of war. Hunger and dehydration begins to set in for everyone, yet somehow Willie still has the strength to keep rowing. And after days on the Atlantic, everyone's strength begins to fade. They spend a lot of time resting to try to conserve what little strength they have. And in this time, Gus gets really desperate and he begins to drink seawater, which causes him to become more and more delirious. He then happens to notice that Willie is hiding a bottle of water underneath his shirt. He confronts Willie about this and tries to wake the others, but Willie distracts Gus and then pushes him overboard, and Gus sadly becomes a casualty to the sea. Now, when the others wake and realize that Gus is no longer in the lifeboat, they confront Willie. Now, Willie says that he took pity upon Gus and allowed him to jump overboard because he was dying of thirst and hunger, and the best thing to have done was to let him go. Now, this is when Sparks begins to remember that Gus was trying to tell him that Willie had water. At this point, Joe forcefully reaches into Willie's shirt to grab the bottle of water, but it hits the deck, the glass shatters, the water is spilled, and this is when the tensions begin to boil. Willie explains that this is part of his plan, and in order to survive, you must be prepared, you must have a plan. He also reveals that he had food tablets and energy pills this entire time. And in a fit of rage, the other members of the lifeboat begin to take control of Willie, physically beating him and throwing him overboard. Now, this is the most brutal scene in the entire movie. And the interesting part of this scene is that the first person among the members of the lifeboat to attack Willie is Alice, the one who says, "I don't understand why people kill each other, and I hate the idea of war." She's the first one to attack Willie. And the only member in the lifeboat who does not take part in this beating is Joe. In fact, Joe grabs Alice off of Willie, pulls her aside and says, "Please, Miss Alice," begging with her not to take part in this savagery. But Alice would break free from Joe's restraints and she would resume towards beating Willie and tossing him out of the lifeboat. At this point, everyone seems to be overwhelmed with what just happened. There are no words exchanged, just deep-seated emotions felt in the moment. And this is when Connie rises up and takes center stage. She begins shouting, "Why are we all sitting here? Why are we all giving up?" She decides that the best thing to do at this point is to take her bracelet off, to use it as bait to try and catch a fish so that they would have something to eat. Now, of all of Connie's material possessions, her bracelet is by far her most prized possession. Earlier in the film, she explained to Kovac how she grew up in basically the same neighborhood that he did on the south side of Chicago. But when she met her first husband, he gave her this bracelet, and she has since looked at that bracelet as her ticket out of that lifestyle and into something higher in society. She's always seen the bracelet as her good luck charm, and she has always refused to take it off. But in her darkest hour, at her most desperate time, when she is absolutely dying of starvation, this is determined to be the only way out. And as they lower the bracelet into the Atlantic Ocean, a fish does begin to strike at it. They begin to pull the fish out of the water, and in that moment, Joe notices just over the horizon that there's a ship coming towards them. And in a fit of excitement, they drop the fish line. It sinks into the ocean, and Connie panics over her bracelet when it is lost. Overwhelmed with emotion, she begins to laugh maniacally at the sight of her bracelet going overboard. Meanwhile, as the German supply ship approaches, the rumble of thunder can be heard across the sky. But we're soon to realize that this is not thunder, it is in fact gunfire from an American ship. The German supply ship is under attack, and the lifeboat is in the direct line of fire. The German supply ship goes down, and as the U.S. ship approaches, our attention is turned towards the outside of the boat, as a young German soldier pulls himself up into the lifeboat. Sparks, Alice, and Connie are quick to help, but Rittenhouse soon intervenes and says, "Throw him back. Have you all forgotten about Willie?" And it's here when the young German soldier pulls out a pistol. However, he's shaken and wounded, and Joe easily disarms him. He then utters the words spoken in German, "Aren't you going to kill me?" Exhausted and in disbelief, the other members of the lifeboat ask themselves, "Aren't you going to kill me?" What do you do with people like that? Sparks answers with, "I was thinking of Mrs. Higley and her baby. And Gus." And Connie closes out the film by saying the words, "Maybe they could answer that." And we'll be right back with the Retro Films Podcast. Goalkeepers. When your job is to protect your goal, You have to trust your hands. And the best way to trust your hands is with Jag goalkeeping gloves. Now, if you know me, you know I love soccer. And for me, I put a high level of respect on a good goalkeeper. But if you want to get to the next level of greatness, you need to trust the brand that makes the best. Go to www.jagsoccer.com. They have tons of different varieties you're sure to love. All built strong and built tough. Just like the athlete you worked so hard to be. For the absolute best and most reliable goalkeeping gloves on the market today, go to www.jagsoccer.com. And welcome back to the Retro Films Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back from that break. And we are talking about the 1944 classic Lifeboat. Now there is so much to unpack from this film, but I want to start by saying that Alfred Hitchcock absolutely knocked it out of the park with this one. When you're filming an entire movie inside of a tiny little lifeboat, you have to get extremely creative with how you film your shots. In order to keep your film visually entertaining and to keep your audience tuned in, you have to constantly change perspectives and do lots of different things with your camera work. And I think Alfred Hitchcock is absolutely brilliant when it comes to this. Apart from that, the acting performances in this film were absolutely stellar. Above all others, I think my absolute favorite performances in this film are turned in by Tallulah Bankhead, who played Connie, William Bendix, who played Gus, and Henry Hull, who played C.J. Rittenhouse. Now, the overall story that's told in this film is fairly simple, and I think that the dynamic of storytelling that happens within character development. We learn so much about these characters throughout the duration of the film. And one by one, little by little, things are revealed about each character that tells more and more of the story. For Connie, we see very quickly that she's materialistic, she's very much involved in her career, she places such a high value on that she overlooks a lot of tragedy that happens right in front of her very eyes. At first we see her as high society, but we learn in the film throughout the character development that she is from a working class background and that everything that she obtained in life, she obtained from marrying different men who put her in a position where she can earn that higher social status. But in the end of the film, she takes her bracelet off because she is absolutely starving to death and she uses it as fish bait, and for Connie, this was a huge stretch. But in the very last scene of the film, as we see the American warship approaching, she all of a sudden panics because her hair and her face and her nails look an absolute mess, and she goes into a panic to get her face looking better before the American ship gets there. It's almost as if she hasn't really changed at all. And then we have a character like Alice, who says she doesn't understand the idea of war, she hates the idea of people killing one another, but when she's confronted with evil, she's the first one to go into attack mode. And then there's Kovac, who has been involved in a lot of different relationships with a lot of different women. He sees right through Connie from the very get-go, but it still doesn't stop him from getting romantically involved with her. All of these little dualities we see within these characters keeps the story not only interesting, but relatable. And all of this lets us know that you don't need a complicated plot, and you don't need a vast and vibrant setting. A good story could be told in a small space with a few interesting characters who are very human and who are pressed beyond their limitations. All you really need is the right people and the right situation, and a great story can unwind itself, just like in this film, the 1944 Alfred Hitchcock classic Lifeboat. That's all the time that I have for today. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. If you like what I got going on, give me a subscribe, give me a share. I would really appreciate that. I will see you guys next time. This is Jaco, and I'm out.